shore for the first fishers of men. In his outward appearances, his words and actions, he forever contains and expresses the reality of who he is. For us, to be spousal gift, our bodies must outwardly sign and symbolize our inner reality, so that our intent, our heart, and our perceptible body and its expressions are at one. Now, to show the meaning of sign and its complex realization in sacramental marriage, Pope John Paul turned to two books of the Old Testament in this series of talks: the Song of Songs and the book of Tobit. The word in the wedding liturgy, he said, is that, quote, which is a sacramental sign in virtue of its content. I take you as my wife, as my husband, and I promise to be faithful to you always, in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health. Now, this word of promise is covenantal, as Father was saying, and fundamental. However, John Paul said, quote, this sacramental word is of itself only a sign of the coming to be of marriage. And the coming to be of marriage is distinct from its consummation. So much so that without this consummation, marriage is not yet constituted in its full reality, unquote. The words of marital covenant must be fulfilled in bodily conjugal intercourse. This is a reality, said John Paul, defined from the very beginning by institution of the Creator. A man will leave his father and his mother and unite with his wife, and the two will be one flesh. So, from the words expressing a readiness to become one flesh, John Paul says we pass to the reality that corresponds to these words. The sacramental sign, he says, is constituted in the intentional order inasmuch as it's simultaneously constituted in the real order. And I think you see there how sign gets fulfilled in the fullness of real symbol. The man and the woman, as ministers of the sacrament of marriage, at the same time constitute the full and real visible sign of the sacrament. Arthur Vogel, in his perceptive book, Body Theology, God's Presence in Man's World, describes words as extensions of the body. He says, words are meaning in matter, a location of presence, embodied presence. Meaning is in words as we are in our bodies. And it's only because we are bodies that we can be our words. Or, as is usually put, mean what we say. Double talk is a way in which a person tries to be in two places at the same time. For we can avoid taking a stand verbally as well as physically, unquote. Writing a half-dozen years before Pope John Paul II's audiences, Arthur Vogel, who was an Anglican bishop, stressed that the bodies we live are not something to which we must give meaning before they are significant for us, like empty containers waiting to be filled. Rather, our bodies have meaning from the first instant. They are, as Vogel says, the location of our presence. And to be a person requires being locatable. And I think that's very important in a digital cyber world. The human body anchors us in the world, said Vogel. And while personal presence is more than the body, we're able to know it to be more only through the body and never without the body. It's our nature to be body meaning and a word. We really don't have a choice about that. But what we do have a choice about, says Vogel, is what we say with our body words. Now, toward the culmination of his audiences on theology of the body, Pope John Paul repeatedly uses the phrase, the language of the body. And he developed his reflection on sacramental sign in marriage by focusing first on the Song of Songs and then on the marriage of Tobias and Sarah in the book of Tobit. He notes that the Song of Songs has been and continues to be interpreted in a variety of ways, but nevertheless, that this inspired text cannot be separated, quote, from the reality of the primordial sacrament, unquote. He stresses that the words, the movements, and the gestures of the spouses correspond to the inner movement of the heart. And he calls the words of bridegroom and bride in the Song of Songs a duet in which their words complete each other. The metaphors adopted for their language of the body, John Paul says, seek support and confirmation in the whole visible world. And one can say they're extravagant. The bridegroom of the song says of his bride, "Oh, most beautiful among women, your cheeks are beautiful between pendants, your neck a string of pearls. How beautiful you are, my beloved, how beautiful you are, your eyes are doves." And the bride's immediate response is, "How beautiful you are, my beloved, how graceful." Now, while John Paul wrote more concerning the Song of Songs than he actually included in his public audiences, he selected strategic lines for quotation. And he summarized in Audience 108, quote, "Love unleashes a special experience of the beautiful, which focuses on what is visible, but at the same time involves the entire person. The experience of beauty gives rise to pleasure which is reciprocal," unquote. Note the tenderness of the bridegroom in the song when he says, "You have ravished my heart, my sister, my bride. You have ravished my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one bead of your necklace. How sweet are your caresses, my sister, my bride." Now, although the spouses in the Song of Songs search for analogies of beauty in the various things of the visible world, says John Paul, at the same time they seem to indicate the insufficiency of each of these particular analogies. The more profound the love, the more inadequate the metaphors and spoken language. Recently, someone told me of a professor who asks his students, "What was the last film you saw that celebrated a happy, faithful marriage. And the question is pertinent regarding the plethora of ways in which love, sexuality, and marriage are portrayed in the media. And I think of special relevance for John Paul's pondering the Song of Songs is the question, how do current love songs express body, love, sexuality, and marriage? And how many of these celebrate true beauty and faithful love? I surely am no aficionado in this regard, but many of you would be. And I encourage all those of you who teach the young to make them aware of the quality, content, language of lyrics coming through the instruments that penetrate their ears and eyes. In preparing for this talk, I pondered my own experience of secular lyrics and melodies that might have at least some correspondence to the Song of Songs. And I go back a ways, and I just was thinking, and two classics really come to mind. You may recognize them. One is, "The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face." And the second is, "Some Enchanted Evening." I think there's some correspondence. And so the first one, "The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face," opens this way. "The first time ever I saw your face, I thought the moon and the stars were the gifts you gave to the dark and endless skies, my love. The first time ever I kissed your mouth, I felt the earth move through my hand like the trembling heart of a captive bird that was there at my command, my love." And the lyrics end three times with, "Your face, your face, your face." And I think there is, in contemporary times, there can be wonderful correspondences to the Song of Songs. The ways in which love is spoken and sung say much about the reality or unreality of an alliance, a marriage, or a culture. In regard to the Song of Songs, John Paul says that the bridegroom expresses, quote, "a particular experience of values that irradiates over everything that stands in relation to the beloved person." And he quotes, "Your lips distill honey, my bride. Honey and milk are under your tongue, and the scent of your garments is like the scent of Lebanon." Now, the bridegroom of the song names his beloved my sister, my bride, friend, each name accenting a special aspect of his love. Sister, in the language of the time, denoted a solid anchoring in common roots of deep interrelationship deriving from the same hearth or family circle. And it was wonderful last night at dinner where we were talking, and one of the women who is here said she came to visit a family. It was a place where she wasn't that acquainted, but she saw that the car lights were on in a car. And so she went to the nearby house and knocked on the door. And she said before they ever opened the door, it was asked, "Who do you belong to?" And she said, "I'm nobody. I don't belong to anybody. I'm a visitor." Which is wonderful. But then it led into a discussion of how in Ireland, how beautiful it is when people identify with their locality, their parish. It's wonderful when I've asked some of you where you're from, and you'll identify immediately the county from which you come in Ireland. Those, I think when we say sister in this regard, it's that kind of hearth idea, that identification with a people. The term friend, John Paul says, indicates what is always essential for love, which puts the second I beside one's own I. Friendship, the love of friendship, amor, amicitiae, signifies in the song a particular movement near each other, felt and experienced as an interiorly satisfying power, unquote. And in light of the song, today's digitalized diminishment of the word friend, I find particularly regrettable. John Paul took special note of two other names by which the bridegroom of the Song of Songs describes his bride: a sealed fountain and a garden enclosed. Quote, "The metaphors just read, garden enclosed, fountain sealed, reveal the presence of another vision of the same feminine I, master of its own mystery. One can say that both metaphors express the personal dignity of the woman, who as a spiritual subject possesses herself and can decide not only the metaphysical depth, but also the essential truth and authenticity of gift of self that tends toward the union about which Genesis speaks," unquote. There's recognition here of that inner inviolability of person, reverence for mystery. And the Song of Songs expresses a reciprocal belonging to one another, that bride and bridegroom are destined for one another. As the song says, "My beloved is mine and I am his." Now, John Paul noted that the Song of Songs opened to all that we define in the concept of eros, something which